It's all about money. I mean, that's what sales is, isn't it? Maybe there's a little bit more to that. If you haven't got yourself organized, if you haven't got your thoughts right, if you don't understand where the answers lie, then this tremendous success, external success, can all come crashing down very, very quickly. So let's find out what sales is really about with Violet Rainwater.
Welcome to eSHAIR.care, an all-inclusive community sharing experience, strength, and hope to create strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships. eSHAIR.care communities work toward every individual feeling safe, valued, and heard, free from the threat of danger, pain, or harm. Each episode, founder Damian Andrews explores the principles underpinning eSHAIR.care and invites expert special guests to share their knowledge so you can easily reap the benefits so many others experience. You hold the choice to create your future. Let it be with strong, healthy, and inspiring relationships.
Hello and welcome to eSHAIR. Here we discuss, promote, and share the benefits to all from living in an egalitarian society, including men. Inaccurate propaganda leads some men to believe that they miss out with equality. The reality, suppressing women is detrimental to men. Creating a world where everyone contributes equally makes everybody better off. Now, today it is my great pleasure to welcome Violet Rainwater. Violet is a sales architect and a motivational speaker on a mission to revolutionize the art of sales. She provides a fresh perspective on the sales and a toolbox of tools that are missing from traditional corporate landscape. She also works and speaks on mental health and provides a lot of information to help people move forward on that journey as well. And Violet did grow up in a bit of poverty and she became a rainmaker today. So Violet, pleasure to have you on the show. So wonderful.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, no, it is wonderful. And I really wanted to speak to you because you have such a diverse background from where you came from, and your passion to do with mental health and taking care of people, but also combining that with sales. So
Right.
can we you'll probably remember there was this wonderful, because I'm a guy, I like cars. There's this wonderful car that was a DeLorean. It was a time machine. And when you hit 88 miles an hour, you could go to any time. So can we jump in that, hit 88
Yes.
miles an hour and go back to what were some of the key things that challenges that you overcame from your past and things that drove you to help you and led you to what you're doing now?
Yeah. All of my struggles began on one day, interestingly enough. And it was a day that really was about a decade in the making. I was born in St. Petersburg, Russia, and my father was, he's a child Holocaust survivor. He, like all of our family, Russian Jews, and, lost a lot of family in that. And he was part of the Communist Party. And so very much embedded in Russian roots, but started seeing like the propaganda, as you were saying, and just started having a vision to immigrate to America. And it took 10 years in the making, but it was the day that we arrived to America that everything changed for me. Okay. So like it was this amazing beginning, but it was the beginning of the hardest season my family and I ever had to go through together.
And
right? Like I was 4. Yep. I was 4 and I was their translator. Okay. Like they would take me on all their important doctors, banker, like all their important, like I was the one translating what was being said because I was the first one to learn English. But it was just the challenges of being a Russian immigrant during the Cold War.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like being a Russian immigrant today. It's not like being a Russian woman today. It was like Remember Rocky, the way they represented Russian women, like they were like big and like Olga and like, had a mole with like hair. So I wasn't exactly the most popular girl in the room. Let's put it that way. I was an outsider. I was the enemy. I was a commie, and I didn't want to be. All I wanted to be was an American. And I also had great poverty. Like we came with $600 to our name, family of 5. My father didn't speak English, so it was hard to get a job. It was, so it was challenge after challenge. And now looking back, my parents were very triggered themselves. They were in fight or flight mode. And, their generation, especially growing up after the war or war babies, like, or going through the war, they didn't grow up with like self-care and healing and identifying your triggers. Like they were really a brain affected generation. And it's something no one talks about, how like these experiences of war shape them for the rest of their lives and how they react with their families. Right. So it's like, it's generational. So my father's trauma then when we came to America was triggered, and who he became in that stress is what triggered me, is what became my trauma.
Okay, so when you're saying your father's trauma, because I mean, I relate to that. My grandfather, both sides, mum and dad's, were war refugees as well from World War II. I'm Polish, Russian, and Ukraine descendant, all 3.
Wow.
And and we learned after my grandfather died that he'd escaped from a couple of concentration camps and things like that. So your dad, you're talking about dealing with the trauma, because mental health is something that's really important for you. Describe what that was like, because from your perspective, you're 4 years old, you're acting as a translator and all these different things. So that must have given you a really in-depth, at an early age, experience to a number of things that children of that age wouldn't even be aware of.
No.
So
Yeah.
how did that shape you?
Yeah, it felt, I really felt their burden, because as children, we're just energetic beings. We just take on whatever the energy is. And my parents they didn't have tools to like cope in a healthy way with an exuberant amount of stress. So they were constantly like just so worried and fighting, and not enough money, never enough money, not enough money, and all the fights were about not enough money and not enough money. And that's what was programmed into my mind.
Yeah.
Is like this, my whole world revolved around not enough money.
Yeah. Was that a driver for you when you say not enough money? It was a driver
Yeah.
Is that what led you to sales?
Oh my God, because I thought that the solution was a whole heck of a lot of money, right? Like, well, if not enough money is over here and I don't want anything to do with this, I'm going to go opposite where there's a lot of money. So yeah, I chose sales. By the time I got into college, I was wearing suits. I was like ready for the business world. I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to be a saleswoman. Like I was a geek in that sense. But I will say my second year out of college, because I was so excited, so passionate, I did. I broke 6 figures. I made 170 my second year. And I didn't have a degree from an Ivy League education, but that's the beauty of sales. You get to do that in our industry. It doesn't matter what your experience is. It doesn't matter what your territory is. You want to make a lot of money, sky is the limit when it comes to sales. So yes, that was very much the motivator for me.
How did you find that? So from your perspective as growing up, you're experiencing your parents talk about all the problems, not being enough money from a young age. Because when I think of my childhood, and so I think we have a number of connections of similar background there, because certainly from my grandparents' perspective, my grandfather never spoke English, even though he spent pretty much all his life in Australia. So that obviously limited what money he could earn. But I never I don't remember hearing anything about money growing up at all, talking about money or anything like that. Whereas you're on the other side of things where you're part of all these discussions because you're translating. What sort of burden did you feel? Because and I know you've touched on it a bit where you're saying this is money is a problem. But was it linking money to the whole of life's problems, or what was that?
Yeah, like in my mind, and it wasn't just because I translated for them. My parents had, very little boundaries. Like they would just go at it. Like you have to remember, two people in fight or flight mode, two
Yeah.
people that grew up, I mean, really with mental health issues. My
Mm.
parents both struggled with most Russians from that generation have mental health problems. Like, I'm sorry to say it, but that's just the generation, the culture. It's very negative. It's very, like it, just go back and look at some of the movies. Like anybody that grew up there would have mental health problems. So you have two people with mental health problems living in fear, no such thing as peace, yoga, self-care. I'm going to go take some time, going to go take a walk in nature. It's just work, 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 come home exhausted, fight, work, 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 work. So this was the world that I knew it. Like my world was chaos.
Yeah.
Every single day. And if it wasn't chaos, it was neglect. Like I went hungry on most days and my parents didn't even know and I didn't say anything. So I didn't have enough food. I was 5 years old walking the streets of Pittsburgh, walking my neighbor's dog because that was my job. I made $1 a week at 5 years old, downtown Pittsburgh. Like, where were my parents? But that's the immigrant story. That is the immigrant. I'm like, I'm not alone. Like, that's how we grew up. And then latchkey is one thing. Then you have the immigrant latchkey. And so that's where all my trauma came from. But I didn't have an awareness to it.
So that became a huge driver from you by the sounds of it, if I'm reading between the lines there correctly, because then you've gone to college and you've stepped out of college and gone straight through. And what it sounds like is pure grit, energy, and determination for 6 figures. Am I hearing that right?
Yes, but at what cost?
Well, that's the next part I was going to ask.
Yes.
What was that like? So you've got all this trauma going, okay, all these problems here are caused by money. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to solve those problems by earning lots of money, which you've worked, by the sounds of it, you've worked your ass off for
night and day, because my worth depended on it.
Yeah, well, that's
my very worth depended on how much money I made.
Yeah. So do you want to talk about that and then the effect of that? Because it sounds like reading between, the research I've done looking at your history, it sounds like you did earn a lot of money, but there was some real, because you talk about it here, if I've got it in your notes, I've got to find it somewhere here, about where you were succeeding on the outside, but inside there was this turmoil and it was completely different. Do you want to explain about that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I chose a career that was high stress, like financial advisor, a woman in a financial service industry. So it was like 98% men when I got into it. And there's a reason for it. It's 100% commission. So literally 0 to 0 at any moment. And back then it wasn't like I'm a Gen Xer. Like when we got into the workplace, it's like, you're just a number. You can be replaced. Sales is just a numbers game. You're only as good as your last month. Like you're nothing. You're happy. You're lucky to be here. And like we believe them. Yeah. Like my generation believe, okay, we'll climb the corporate ladder. We'll sell our soul. We'll work when we have bronchitis. We'll put in 80 hours a week. Okay, we will have no passions. Like we were idiots. These newer generations, they're much smarter than we. They're like, hell no, this is not the way. There has to be a different way. But that was the way that I learned. And so I ran on anxiety, debilitating anxiety from morning till night, from day one till the last day of the month, and then all over again. It was nonstop for almost 2 decades until I couldn't do it for even another day.
Right. So what happened then?
Well, it all came falling down, right? Like here I was at the peak of my career, making $500,000 a year. Like on the outside, I had all the boxes checked, like everything I ever dreamed of. On the inside, nothing changed. I'm
imagining on the outside, as you're talking, I'm picturing Wolf of Wall Street. I'm picturing Rainwater's going gung ho, and I want to visualize what happened next. What was it? What was that crash like?
Well, so there's a story to that. The story is that I went to New York and I'm walking around New York. I have all this money in my pocket and I don't want to buy anything. I'm like frustrated. Like I'm like, what I'm asking, like, what has all of this been for? Like, if I'm not happy now making the kind of money I am now, then what is this whole chase been about? And then I realized, like, I had the wrong dream. I was chasing the wrong dream. And so I decided to have a little chat with God.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on my way to work, and I said, I was like so clear to me because I was so frustrated. I was so like just needing a change. I didn't want to do what I was doing anymore. And I said, Father, thank you for all my blessings.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I both know that this is not what I came to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever needs to happen to get me from where I am to where I am destined to be,
Mm-hmm.
bring it. Bring it. Like, I screamed it on the top of my lungs. Like and I had an out-of-body experience. I think I gave birth to like some dark spirit living it. Like something came out of me and into the world, because 3 days later, oh, did he bring it? Yeah. Oh, I was fired as a top producer
Oh, no.
for the first time in my life, while I was the primary breadwinner, living in the most expensive part of our country, Orange County, California. Like, literally everything I'd ever been afraid of, like being broke, being poor, not having money, like everything I'd been paddling my whole life to try to prove to the world, that I didn't even recognize I was doing, came crashing down. My greatest fear, all of it. I lost all my material possessions. I couldn't move for the first 6 months. I was paralyzed.
I was going to say, what was that like in that moment in the office when they've said, "Hey, Violet, don't come in anymore"? Was it just?
I have often went back to that moment because I wish I could redo it.
Yeah.
Because I was in survival mode.
Yeah.
I didn't see it coming. I didn't have good coping mechanisms. I shut down completely.
Right.
Instead of being honest and telling them what was really going on and why I made these choices, because I would like to think on a compassionate level, when people understand the mental like stress that one is under, they might have different, because it wasn't like they had to fire me. It was just they didn't understand, and I didn't defend myself. Yeah. I just shut down. And that's what happens when we don't have coping mechanisms. We shut down when it's too much.
Yeah.
It was too much for me to process. Like, I couldn't, like, in my mind, I'm like counting all my bills, my mortgage, my kids, childcare, my car. Like, how am I going to pay all of this? I lost 90% of my income.
Yeah. So what happened then? What was that? So you've gone through this process, because from what I hear you talking about, you as a public speaker is your real passion, talking about mental health and things like that. Was that where that transition came? Was that where that awareness came? Or was that, whether you were aware of it at the time, but you think that was the foundation when you've been pushing for this money thing, because that's what was the fear? Because you mentioned that. And also to the part you mentioned, prove to the world. What did you have to prove to the world?
It wasn't even me. It was that little girl that felt like an outsider, right? It was I call it my girl of yesterday. It was her. Like, it was her trying to prove to the world that she wasn't a commie, that she wasn't an outsider, that, like all she wanted to be was an American and fit in, so it's that void, but that's not even real. So of course I could never fill it, because A, I didn't even have an awareness to it.
Yeah.
And B, it wasn't even real. It was just a story in my head. That experience is what makes me a rock star speaker today. That experience is what gives my message like depth, and what makes me connect with people on a heart-to-heart level, because that's the human experience is one of many. Like, most people have a hardship story.
Mhm.
Most of us in the workforce today have trauma that we had to endure or felt like an outsider or like we didn't fit in, even if we were an American and grew up in wealth.
Mm.
It's all based on the stories in our mind. And so I just didn't see it that way. I saw it as something was wrong with me fundamentally. So you asked like what changed then. That was when I finally got diagnosed. Like that's when I finally understood how my childhood experiences
Mm.
shaped my thoughts, my feelings, my behaviors, my coping mechanisms, and my results, my limited results.
Mm. 'Cause
And then I started healing and rewiring my brain
yeah.
so I could outperform my circumstances, if you will.
Yeah, because that's what I want to get to. Because you mentioned here you didn't have an awareness of it. This child that needed to prove herself to the world so that she
Yep.
could fit in, if I heard that correctly.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but you're carrying that, but you didn't have awareness that you were doing it. So you're pushing really hard, full of energy, driving really hard. It sounds like you were getting exhausted. And maybe if you hadn't been fired, you would have had a breakdown by the sounds of it, if I'm hearing that correctly.
Yeah.
And so the firing was probably a good thing because it stopped you.
It was a blessing for sure.
So but from your perspective, and now as a speaker that is passionate on this topic of mental health and taking care of people, how do you help people get that awareness of, you're just driving really hard without, is that really necessary? Because I've had someone say to me once, we're talking about money, and someone said money doesn't buy happiness. And the response was, and poverty does, question mark. And the link that I took from that is that they're not linked.
Right.
And I've got friends who are super wealthy, extremely happy. It's not about the money. They've got the money.
Right.
Their personal happiness has got nothing to do with the fact that they've got money.
Right.
And I've got other friends who are not wealthy, and they're just as happy.
Right.
And so I look at that connection. So what I'm trying to get to is, and in your case, it was, okay, money, I've got to, I want to fit in. And was it the fact if you had money, you would fit in? Because America does have that, corporate culture of, that American dream, you can have all these things. Was that part of that, do you think?
I mean, I think it was definitely to fit in, but I think I think if we just had more money, Papa wouldn't hurt us anymore. If we just had more money, Mama and Papa wouldn't fight. If we just had more money, my sister wouldn't have turned to drugs. If we just had more money, my brother wouldn't be without friends. If we just had more money, then I'd be more popular. If we just had more money became the solution to every single problem that we had in my child's mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I was going to say, how much of that, because again, with the work that you're doing with speaking, because that is when you look at, couples, for example, one of the key things they argue about is money.
Right.
And we link a lot of this to money. And I've found it seems to be the opposite when you actually focus on the other things. The money seems to take care of itself, from my experience. How much of that, where do you think that comes from? This thing that it's the money that's going to solve the problem, not our, the way we're communicating. Because I know people have gone through extreme hardship in their marriage, money wise. They've talked about it. They've stuck together as a couple, and they've solved it and worked really well. Whereas other people, as you know, they'll fight about money and break up.
Right.
How do we make that distinction that it's not the money, it's actually the communication? Because again, working on that mental health side of things. What do you think makes the shift? You go, hey, it's about how we communicate. It's not about the external stuff.
Yeah, I think it's about the meaning we put on what having money means. It's the meaning that we put on anything, right? So if we're putting meaning, to me, the meaning that I put on having a lot of money was like everything to me, right?
Yeah.
It was the meaning that I put onto it. But when I realized is like that experience of hearing we don't have enough money, it really tainted my relationship with money. Even though I made a lot of money, I still always had this fear. And so I would either overspend or I just had destructive coping mechanisms because of my relationship with money. And so what I had to really start doing is healing how I felt about money.
Hmm.
right? Which is hard to do sometimes, especially if it's so ingrained. And so for me, it was just creating a lot of peace around the subject of money because there was a lot of chaos, there was a lot of turmoil, right? Like,
Mm.
and so it was the more that I could experience ease and peace and trust, like all the things that I had never been able to experience around anything. Like I could never even have those feelings growing up because I was just so uh, running on worry because that was what programmed into me.
Yeah.
But so the more that I started incorporating practices that activated my parasympathetic wing of my nervous system, my relaxation response, when I
Mm.
started regulating my nervous system every time it got dysregulated, so it's like, it's really about taking a step back and understanding it scientifically, what's
Mm.
happening, this chemical reaction in my body. I'm moving from a place of harmony to a place of disharmony, to fight and flight, where the longer I hang out here, the more detrimental, the more poor choices I'm going to make as well. And
Yeah.
so it's really spreading awareness on what it looks like when you are
Mm.
triggered in the workplace, what it looks like when you are in fight or flight, and what you can do about it. Because until you do something about it, it's going to remain having control over you.
Yeah. So do you think that's what happened when you said you shut down, when you got fired, you shut down basically for
Yep.
6 months? And you talked about you hadn't experienced peace before. Was that a period where you started to experience, because you'd
Yeah.
shut down, was that where you started to experience peace and get that awareness?
Yeah. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't in go mode. I
Ah.
wasn't working. I wasn't producing. I wasn't making money for the first time. Like
Mhm.
even from the age of 5, I had to produce and help the family and have good grades. Like there was always conditions upon my existence, right? So
Yeah.
this was the first time it's like, who am I when I'm not making money?
Mm.
Like, that's when I realized, like, oh my God, like my entire self-worth was based on how much money I made. And so having those realizations, and it started slow, like just slowing down. And then I started with a walk in the morning
Yeah.
and just being outside in nature, like just creating a little bit of spaciousness in my life, in my day, slowing down. In this case, because I had no choice.
Yeah.
That's how, like, if you want more peace, you have to practice peace.
Yeah,
If
that
you want, like that's the secret. You got to practice that which you don't currently have.
yeah, so with the peace side of things, because you were talking about your self-worth, is that also was that your identity as well? So when you talk about it, your identity was all about having money because that solved all the problems. It was going to solve the arguments. It was going to solve all those issues. I mean, and was that a time where you could actually reflect? Because I'm guessing from that perspective of when you were in go mode, like a lot of things in those space when you're so focused, it's almost like you've got blinkers on and you're missing all the things that are right there in front of you. So I'm guessing, if I'm reading correctly, and I'm making an assumption here because you haven't said it, but I'm making an assumption that when you're in go mode, that even your personal relationships weren't fully peaceful. I'm imagining, is you were going. Is that fair to say, or am I incorrect on that? Because
Well, absolutely, because some of the symptoms of childhood trauma is people pleasing, not
mm,
having boundaries,
yeah,
worrying. Like I remember if I left a message for a friend and she didn't reply, in my mind, like I'm already going back like the last 3 times I saw her, and maybe it was something I said, and I know she's upset with me.
yeah,
And then if it was a client and they called, like automatically I thought something was wrong and I did something wrong. When in reality, like they just had a question about their statement, or my friend just got busy, her grandma died, but in my mind, it was like something like, like it was that nervousness, And so, yeah, it definitely affected, and it was exhausting. It
mm,
was an exhausting way of existence.
yeah. Thank you for opening up on that, because I relate to that. I've done that myself as well, and I think a lot of people have that experience where I had that when I was in corporate environment, and the boss would call you in to give you an instruction. I'm thinking, what have I done wrong?
Yep.
And I really appreciate that you opened up on that, because that's quite a personal thing to share with people. And then from that process of finding peace, you've shut down and you've basically gone from 100%, well, I would imagine about 150 to 200% in given your energy, and to nothing, and then it sounds like you slowly stepped your way into it. So we started going for a walk, started to do um,
Yeah.
maybe a bit of meditation. Or what were the things you went through, and what was that process of then finding where that peace was?
Yeah, I had to start really, really slowly because during this time it was being revealed to me
Mm,
what were the experiences, like scene by scene, that I went through where this girl of yesterday became frozen.
yeah.
Like I literally had to go back to, every time that I, as a little girl, was emotionally violated, physically violated.
Mm,
And, now as a mother, like it was very interesting because I had to move back in with my parents.
wow.
And my daughter at that time was 4 years old.
Mm,
But like God works in mysterious ways. I was 4 years old, the first beating I ever got.
wow.
And so to have a daughter that like is my entire world, and like I would never, like
Mm,
I err on the side of like I would never touch them. I would never touch them and hurt, like I would never. So
mm,
to be able to kind of wrap my mind around what happened to me,
mm,
like even, yes, granted, there was like all there's, it wasn't like from a therapy perspective, it was just like, this is what happened to me.
mm,
This is what it did to my thought process. This is what it did to my brain. This is how it shows up. And, this is what I'm up against.
yeah.
And so it was a really like painful, like there's so much to swallow and
Mhm.
so much to open my eyes to, that I had been living in denial. And there were a lot of emotions to process. So as much as I was trying to build peace, there was so much rage inside him, and rightfully so. Like someone had to be angry for that little girl. Like
Yeah.
that's part of my healing journey, was being enraged at what had happened to me
Mm,
and how much it affected me and my livelihood as an adult.
yeah. That's interesting. And so you went through that, because there is that process, and we won't get into the details of that, but there is that process where you got to go through that anger and then acceptance and all those kind of things, and then finding the peace.
Yes.
And so, what was finding the peace like? What does peace look like for you now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a completely different human being, like energetic being. I vibe, I run on peace. Peace is the cornerstone of my day.
Mm,
I would say one of the transformational practices that I started doing, and it's been 5 years.
hmm.
So two things happen. One is I moved out of California.
Yeah.
And I say that intentionally because I notice whenever I go back to visit, because I do all the time, I feel that anxiety come like that, like I got to make things happen. I got to work. I got to produce. I got to make things happen. Right. Whereas
Mhm.
in Colorado, it's an entirely different vibe. Like I was able to really slow down and heal in
Yeah.
Colorado. So
Mm,
that's the first thing. But the second is I started a morning practice, and it included meditation.
mm,
So meditation every morning,
yeah.
like no matter what, it has completely changed my life.
What's your meditation? Do you want to share? Because I mean, I'll get you to share yours, and I'll.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, what works really well, I prefer guided meditation. And what I find is for anyone that's had childhood trauma, guided meditation works really good because essentially, if you've ever read the work of, oh gosh, his name is slipped out of my head,
We'll put in the
but
show
he talks.
notes.
Yeah, Gaber Mate. He writes a lot about childhood trauma,
Mm,
and he basically says that all of what it causes is ADD in the brain. right? So it creates this like scattering in the brain. And so what's nice about guided meditation for people like me is it gives us something to focus on. Whereas if we try to just quiet our mind, that's even harder because there's like so many pieces. That's how we were programmed. We were programmed to like have like a billion pieces. I mean, we were literally shattered. When you go through trauma, you become shattered, you know, mentally, physically. Like that's exactly what happens to you. So that affects your thought process. It has this shattering effect. Whereas guided meditation, it allows you to wrap your mind around something and go on a journey. And so that's what I started doing. And 2 years ago, I started quantum jumping in my meditations. And that completely up-leveled my business. That's something I love talking about now because not only is it a great healing modality, but it's a great way to ignite results. And I'm not sure if are you familiar with quantum jumping meditations? Have you ever done anything like that?
Until I did research for this podcast, but I didn't know of it, and then I saw it on your thing. But you want to talk about it to explain? Because I've only seen the bits that I've seen on your website.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And look, I am someone who is a practice. I practice it and I share it with all my colleagues and friends. But there are experts like on YouTube. One of my teachers and who I started researching with is Brian Scott. He has a ton of videos on quantum jumping. And that's what I really started doing. And essentially what it is it's this concept of working with the quantum field. Whereas like everything is energy, right? Like everything is energy and we're energy. And, you know, if I'm happy, I'm energized, I'm vibrating up here. And like people that, you know, are maybe more evil intentions vibrate here. And so everything is like connects energetically. So like when you meet people, they are energetically in alignment with you. And so this concept is like there's other realities of you happening right now, just in different vibrations. So there's you who made the choices to do this, and this, and now you're living your best life ever. And when we quantum jump, we meditate and we literally jump into this reality that's happening right now. And so we start vibrationally connecting with it.
Yeah. Okay.
So when you literally take your mind to be, like, let's say you are now the most sought after speaker, most sought after podcast host. It's 1 year later and you got, 2.8 million in the bank and you're living in your dream home and you're walking around your hallway and you see yourself meditating in your library and you see yourself with your family around this huge Christmas tree in the great room and you feel it and you go back and you visit it time and time and time again. You quantum jump to these higher vibrations of yourself. Well, now what starts happening is you start attracting people and circumstances that are in alignment with this new pathway that you are on. And within time, it is law. You will be living this reality as long as you can maintain that vibration over and over and over again.
Yeah. Is that similar? Because I've heard when you mentioned about the quantum field, there's Dr. Joe Dispenza talks a bit about so that sort of thing. And it's similar to, I know from my perspective, and I haven't thought about it from that way, but I just go, this is my life. I'm freaking awesome at this, and it just happened, and so many things just came into it wasn't as technically. And I struggle to speak sometimes, and I say English is my second language, and I don't have a first one. So I probably don't give it as much justice, but really getting that clarity about what it is that you want, and then moving towards that. Is that in a layman's?
Yeah, it's the law of attraction is what you're talking about. Like you create clarity in mind, and you create a focus. Right? Like you are focused on that. But what quantum jumping lets you do is it lets you become it with practice. So like what happens when, as I was talking and you were envisioning, like if I was to walk you through, in fact, let's do it. You want to do it together really quickly? I'll walk you through a little mini meditation and we're just going to quantum jump. Okay. So let's take a deep breath in.
Yep.
And let it go. Feel yourself relax. And another deep inhale. And let go. Feel yourself being supported by the chair that you're in, and just sit back and lean into it a little bit. Take another deep inhale. Hold for a count of 3. And as you exhale, imagine yourself sinking deeper into your chair. Now imagine that there is this ball of energy around you, right in front of you, and it starts to hover right at your feet. This ball of energy is going to relax each part of your body. And as this ball of energy now is running around your feet, circling around, swirling around, you can feel your feet with every exhale begin to relax. As you inhale, this ball of energy moves up your calves, your knees. And as you exhale, you can feel your knees and your calves relax, sink in a little bit deeper. Inhale, imagine this light of energy moving up your legs, your waist, your belly. And on your exhale, imagine these parts relax even more. Inhale, this ball of energy is now lighting up your chest, your shoulders, your arms, your back. Exhale, you feel totally relaxed. Deepest inhale yet, take it in. Imagine this ball of energy is now all over your body, protecting you, healing you, relaxing every muscle. I want you to imagine for a moment that it is no longer February 26th, 2023. It is now February 25th, 2024. And you have just had the most epic year of your career. You have reached heights that you have only at times considered. You are now being asked to share what the last year has been like for you. Please share with me the images that first come up. What are the things that you have accomplished 1 year later?
There's massive growth in my business.
What does that look like? How much revenue percentage have you grown? 300? 400?
Yeah, it's 1,000%, or a little bit over.
1,000%. Okay, do you see that number?
Yeah.
Feel that. Read that number in, and talk to me about your clients. Talk to me about what it's like working at this level.
There's massive transformation with the clients. There's a completely different dynamic that they experience. Their whole, not their businesses, not just their businesses, but their whole livelihood has been affected in a good way. They have more time with their families and their children. They have more peace within themselves and their clients, and it becomes like a spider web that filters through to other people that they touch, and it progressively filters around the world.
Wow. And how does it feel to be the one that affected all this transformation and gets to be a part of it now?
And sitting on top of Everest effectively is wonderful. Yeah.
How does it feel inside? What are the sensations you're experiencing?
It's a big ball of light.
Mm,
It's very peaceful, very harmonious.
he's harmonious.
Mm.
Nice. And what are some of these conversations you're having with their clients when they start sharing with you how much their lives have changed, how much nothing's the same, and they're so grateful for you and for the service that you provided? How does that feel?
It's a humbleness. It's
Mm,
a yeah, a humbleness of being able to know that they can actually share that with other people as well.
mm. And what are you doing now at this new level? Where are you traveling? What are you doing for fun?
It's kind of similar to what I do now because it's just a broader reach of people. It's an extended reach of people that I'm in touch with over and above.
Higher connections, new connections,
But many more.
high rollers.
No, yeah, I think people are more sort of it doesn't high rollers doesn't seem to be, but it's more just just a deeper personal connection with people.
Mm, I love that. I love that. And when you're going to bed at night, how does it feel? How do you feel knowing that you have all these deep connections? You just had the most epic year ever. You grew by 1000%, and you're now poised to triple it in the next 6 months.
It feels awesome. It feels immense satisfaction and um, just feel awesome about who I am and my place in the world, and
Mm.
just feel that it's great to be able to contribute in the way that I do.
And can you see yourself as you're talking about this? And can you envision yourself in this new role?
Yeah, I can see, feel it, and I can even hear things around as well.
And how are you standing
I was
from
actually
this?
I was laying in bed in that I
Mm,
was going to sleep, so
laying in bed.
just thinking my day going, "Oh, that's really cool. That was a really
Nice.
good day." Yeah.
Nice. Okay. I want you to just take a moment and really capture, if you could capture an image of this moment and what it feels like
Mm,
to be in alignment with your calling, with your highest self.
mhm,
Just
yeah,
taking it, just capture it for a moment. And I'm going to bring you back. Let's take a deep breath in. Let it go. And as you're ready, just open up your eyes. I felt that.
mhm, awesome. I felt
That's the beauty of energy. It travels,
I hope the audience
right?
would copy and did it as well, so
It's so transformational, right? And like I believe in the future we're going to use more of these, but quantum jump, like what we just did is a form of quantum jumping.
mm,
Us jumping to this future reality that you want to experience it and having you experience it right now
yeah,
was you quantum jumping. And what it essentially means is you completely changing your energy. It's all about energy.
yeah,
And so, from an energy of where you are right now, the only thing keeping you from living that life
mm,
is energy. It's thought patterns, like it's just energy patterns, right? And so, the more that you start going to this place 1 year later, you'll start vibing at that level. And it is law, it will become your reality.
yeah. Love that, that's really awesome. How does that link? Because you mentioned before as well, you talked about the chemicals in your body, and that's where I wanna, take, this quantum jumping you're talking about and explore that, because when we do things, we think about, when we think about things, and it changes how the chemicals are produced in our body, and as you're well aware, dopamine makes us feel happy. That's what when we're doing something, and video games are designed around us feeling dopamine. What I think a lot of people may not be aware of is that simply thinking happy causes that dopamine to produce. So, do you want to explain about your journey and understanding of how the chemicals affect your body, and how you use that?
Yeah, absolutely. Because first and foremost, we're energetic beings. We are always generating energy. So
Mm,
we're not just sending out energy. But like, so if you see like a sad person, they're not just sending out sad energy, they're also receiving sad energy, right? Yeah. And so the beauty of quantum jumping, or thinking about things and feeling things that bring us great joy, great bliss, great passion, those bring out the highest energy levels within us. Mm-hmm. Right. And they literally change our chemistry. That's when we are truly operating at our peak levels. Mm. But when we are stuck in, it's never going to work out, it's never going to happen, oh my God, oh my God, this, oh my God. When we live in fight or flight mode, that produces chemicals also that are extremely harmful for our mind, our body, our soul, our gut. There's no areas that it actually helps us unless we are in a true threat. Yeah. But most of us stay in this fight or flight mode. And so that's why we see so much heart disease, anxiety, depression, suicide. It's all right there. It's, and so what we don't recognize is we have the ability to change our chemistry. We're waiting for something outside of us to change so that we can change inside. Yeah. That's not the way the brain works. The subconscious, the brain doesn't know the difference if you're experiencing it, imagining it, or remembering it. It has the same chemical reaction on the body.
Yeah. Yeah, because I wanted to explore that, because from my perspective, I never have a bad day, ever. I go to bed every night. And that's why I was pitching it, like going, my day was awesome. I did all this awesome stuff. And part of that wanted to come to was the chemical side of things, because I trained myself. And you mentioned about practice, and I want to add the word habit there. If we create a habit, we are mostly operated out of habit, where that's what we do. Not all those habits are beneficial for us. But if we change that habit, but if we change them so they are, and from my perspective, and that's why I wanted to touch on the chemical side of things, when I and it just happens unconsciously for me now, is if something is what would cause someone to feel stress, I automatically switch and go, okay, how can I use this, and what's good about it? And the dopamine starts to be produced, and I start to feel good, and a whole bunch of new things open up, moving towards the objectives that I'm trying to achieve. And that's where I wanted to get to. You really touched on a point that I'd like you to explain a bit more in relation to that. Is you said outside of us, we're looking outside of us. And I think that happens even more so today with all the social media and things. Everyone's looking outside. Whereas really, and I have a little snip. I have these little snippets from shows. I don't watch a lot of TV or movies, but I've got little snippets that I cut out of it. And it was from a future show. It was the show The Orville, which is kind of like a Star Trek set well in the future. And they've got this, and they go to a civilization that's not as developed. And the girl there, she ends up on the spaceship. And she goes, "Wow, if we had all of this, our society would be really different." And the lady there that's on the starship says, "You've got to flip it. When you are right inside, that's when you have all that." Do you want to talk about that? Because you talked about this whole thing of looking on the outside to find the answers, but the answers are not there as far as I understand. But is that same from your perspective as well? Is that where your transition changed, when you stopped this, I've got to get all this wealth to be whole, to I'm actually whole and now I can have all this other stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly what it was. I mean, for me, it was always thinking that it was the Jordache jeans or the Doritos. Like if I just had Doritos in my lunch, if I just had Jordache, because also as a Gen Xer, like I was raised in the 80s when it was all about mass consumption, and the more, the better, like the richer.
The Doritos ads.
You say that again?
I remember the Doritos ads. We had them here.
Yes. Well, and all I wanted were Doritos, like, because we couldn't afford things like that. So, and obviously as I got older, it was like, oh, it's the Louis Vuitton or the Gucci or the house or the ring. But it's like every time. So here's how it kind of worked in my mind. I thought it was six figures. Like I thought that's what happiness would, when I finally hit six figures, then I'd be happy. Made 170, second year out of college, didn't feel any different, and thought, oh, well, then it must be 200. So then next year I grinded even more, hit 200, didn't feel any different. oh, it must be 250. Oh, it must be 300. And it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me until it finally hit me because I couldn't do it anymore. And so it was literally losing everything
Mm.
that allowed me to find myself.
Yeah.
That was the biggest aha, is I had no idea who I was because I had spent my life trying to be the American girl, to be a certain way because I wanted to be accepted so deeply that I never really even felt comfortable in my own skin.
Yeah. I love that because you're talking about there that striving. It's to be happy. I've got to have that. Then you have it, and it's like I don't. I love how you said that you didn't feel any difference, and maybe it's this, but it's not that. It's in here. Then when you make that change there, everything else. Not only that, it's funny how the money changes. It's all of a sudden you have all this money, you don't have to work so hard for it.
Right.
That's my experience.
Well, and it's because like as I started like working on just figuring out who I am. I remember when I realized that I didn't know who I was, and here I am drinking a cup of coffee at like 2 p.m. But that's what all I had. I'm like, okay, I know that Violet Rainwater likes coffee, and that was all that I had. And I had to start from there. And I really had to start like so slowly with myself, right? It was like steps of self-care and self-love. And what that did in time is it really allowed me to start liking myself, because I think that's what it is at the end of the day. It's our self-perception.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's our blueprint of what we think of ourselves. And I had a really messed up blueprint. Like I thought that something was fundamentally wrong with me. And no matter what I did and no matter how high I reached, it never felt like enough. But that's just a symptom of childhood trauma. That's not me. Like I am a child of God. I am perfection at its finest. Like I am, like all of us are. We're brothers and sisters, and we all have gifts, and we all have so much light, and we came to add so much value in this world. But we can't do that until we start with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we can't share our gifts if we don't like who we are.
Yeah. I love that. The part that stood out for me was you said it all changed when you started to like yourself.
Who knew that that's all I had to do? I tried everything else, right? I'm like, that you mean just me? Really? Oh, okay. I have never tried that before.
But I love that because for me, I mean, life is really simple and really easy. There's key principles, you follow them. And it's easy. If you go off path and try and do it again. This is the example I use. If you cannot, if you go to the 20th floor of a building and step off the balcony, it doesn't matter if you don't believe gravity exists. Right. It will go down. These principles, these principles exist. You follow
universally.
Them.
Yep.
Exactly. And your life is easy. And liking yourself. And I fortunately, I learned that at a reasonable age for my son, because that was one of the key things I taught him. From a young age, I always ask him, "Do you like yourself?" That's all that's important. Do you like yourself?
That's all that's important. And that's it.
And it's amazing how it changed. And I watch because we'll go out, and he won't take his phone. I say, "You're not taking your phone," and he goes, "I don't need it. I'm just going to be with you guys." Like
how old is he?
14.
Wow, good job, Papa. That's huge.
But that's what I'm getting at. That was the fundamental thing there, was just from a young age. And because I had learned that, because I didn't, same sort of thing. I didn't like myself, and I learned to like myself. And that's where that change happened. And that's where I said, I have an awesome day every day because I like myself, and I look at the things that I know, as you say, understand how the chemistry in your body works. It makes, if you know that, then you can train yourself. Do you want to talk about
auto-suggestion, what you're doing? Right. Yeah. You've heard of auto, like that's all like, I have a best day every day. That's auto suggestion. It's brilliant. Like you declare it and you put it out there and you attract it. I mean, that's just how it works.
And it's what you focus on. I had a day where everything was going well. My mum had given me a little kitten to give to a friend, and I had a massive day. And then or to one of her friends, whatever, in the city, because they live far apart. And big busy day, then ducked off to pick up my son from school, forgot the cat, and the other person's there waiting, and it's like, and I had this massive day. I could have gone, my day's crap because I forgot the cat, and they went, hang on a minute, my day's had so many great things.
Yes,
this is an awesome.
There you go.
And I've got to come
Yes.
back tomorrow anyway, near where they live. I'll just drop it off then.
But see, that's a practice. That's
It
a
is
habit.
correct. Yeah. I love that you do that. So do you want to, I know you've got to run and we've gone a little bit over time. Do you want to talk about your public speaking and the sales things that you do from this is your product placement. You can do I don't like ads, but product placement's fine.
Well, mine
Tell
is
us all
more.
about the work you do and how people can contact you.
Yeah. Yeah. So on a professional level, like I said, I'm a sales architect, but what my passion really is I'm on a mission to bring to the workplace this knowledge and this toolbox of tools that were missing for me, So my experience in corporate is every time we had a speaker, that speaker didn't bring, like, even if it was highly motivating and a great message, it was never something that I could like implement into my workday and actually help me move the needle. And my passion for spreading this message came from not getting the tools that I needed, especially during market corrections, when you're on 100% commission. And so what my mission is to equip the workplace of today, especially these younger generations who have never been through a market correction, with my keynote. So the one that I'm running with right now is the self revolution, and it's break free of past programming so you can thrive in the modern workplace. And I educate them on how the experiences of the past, what it looks like today in their professional lives, and how that's what holds them back. Not their website, not their territory, not the economy, not the SEO, not their competition. It's their past programming. But that's just where we begin, because once we take the hood off and understand, why we got what we got, now the real work comes in. And so now I equip them for the battlefield, because that's what the workplace of today is. It's a battlefield. And so they get practices, they get tools on how to manage their energy, their emotions, their stress, so they can perform at optimal levels. And so this knowledge is transformational. This isn't like, oh, it's a great message. If they practice these tools, this is what I wish someone would have shared with me, these brain hacks, these ways to not just help me in the moment, but long-term, what we're doing is we're tapping into the power of neuroscience and neuroplasticity. We're giving them the practices to change the way their brain works. And so long-term, they're going to have exponential results. And so you could tell I'm really excited to bring this, because there's nothing out there like this. And I got the story, I got the tools, I got the passion, and I'm excited to come to an organization near you.
Awesome. I love that. And before we go, do you want to we'll put all your contacts in the show notes, but is there any specific ways you prefer people to contact you?
My website is a great place. So www.violetrainwater.com, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm a content creator on LinkedIn. I'm always there. I love to connect with people in the DM. So that's a great place to start.
Yeah, awesome. And do that, because Violet has so much great stuff on her website and also on her LinkedIn. There's and very exciting little videos with Violet dancing around and
spreading joy, spreading good vibes.
Exactly. I love it. I was watching them and going, this is so cool. You just so much energy.
There is a science. There's a science to my madness.
There certainly is.
Neuroscience, to be exact.
Exactly. So do you want to leave, before we finish, do you want to leave the audience with your key takeaways, your key wisdom? Can be one, can be many, your choice. What would you want them to take away? What would you want the audience to take away?
Yeah, that no matter where you find yourself today, like, I don't care how dark of a place that you are in, and you might feel like there's no way out. I want you to know that this is happening for you, for your growth, for your development. Even if it doesn't look like that right now, one day you will look back and you will realize that this was the greatest blessing, because with every loss, every time you lose something, something greater comes back that is even for your greatest good, your highest self. And so instead of beating yourself up because maybe you made the choices to get you here and you have regret, instead of feeling bad about things, why not Just take a deep breath
Mm.
and surrender
Mm.
and be open to the adventure, because this experience is exactly what needs to happen so you could get to the next level of your experience. And if I could be a resource for you, a tool on your journey, then I would be delighted to be your teacher and your guide.
Love that. Love that. Violet, Rainwater, it has been such a pleasure having you on your show. Thank you for everything you've done and shared. I look forward to catching up again sometime in the future, but thank you very much for making the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much. This was so nice. Thank you kindly.
Thank you for being part of the eSHAIR.care community and helping people around the world prosper. You're creating a bigger pie for everyone to share. The more people contributing to the world being a better place, the better the world becomes for others and for you.